So I wanted to talk about our next topic, so traditional Chinese medicine, because I think a lot of people, when they're on the fertility journey, it now seems to be more a standard practice to actually include acupuncture. Many progressive clinics, fertility clinics, are including acupuncture as one of their recommendations for pre and post transfer. And wanted to talk today about it's about assembling your board of directors or your fertility team and looking at a fertility coach, a acupuncturist, a traditional medicine practitioner, your nutritionist, your OBGYN, and your RE. But really, you're in the center. So it's this healing roundtable, first actually popularized by Dr. Oz. So the healing roundtable, but you're in the center. And a lot of times we just give over how our health to the person in the white coat. And we forget about ourselves and forget about the other practitioners that can help us. So it's not about using all these practitioners all at once. It's really seeing, what's happening in your body and what works best. So today we're going to explore traditional Chinese medicine, really talk about some of the different diagnoses. And although in functional medicine, we don't focus on the diagnosis, and similar in traditional Chinese medicine, they don't focus on the diagnosis, but really looking at the whole person. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to leave a review or a comment on iTunes and enjoy. Hey there, I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers, and really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FabFertile.com, and click on book a free call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FabFertile.com, and click on book a free call.
Our body's like this circuit. It's almost like a machine. When you open it up and you see wires moving around, that's what we have as meridians. And when those meridians are blocked, it's not able to do what it needs to do. It's not able to communicate efficiently.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Clark, and my mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Most of all, I want you to wake up. So with functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. Today, I'm welcoming Michelle Oravitz to the podcast, and we're digging into how traditional Chinese medicine works to help fertility. Michelle Oravitz is a fertility acupuncturist who decided to change her career from architecture to natural medicine in the early 2000s. It was not until her life was transformed by acupuncture that she thought of changing her career from architecture to natural medicine. Michelle suffered from missed periods from the time she was 13. After years of being prescribed the birth control pill by Western medicine doctors and coming off the pill to continued missed periods, she decided to go to an acupuncturist named Dr. Lee, who immediately regulated her cycle. Michelle also noticed that the acupuncture created a sense of well-being and that her energy increased. It was this transforming event that inspired her to learn Ayurveda and later traditional Chinese medicine. She also realized that it had not been for Dr. Lee, she would have struggled for many years to get pregnant. This realization and natural fascination to learn about fertility drew her to specialize in fertility wellness. She's passionate about empowering women and couples to take ownership of their health and wellness. Her method of treatment encompasses not only herbs and acupuncture, but also incorporates diet, supplements, essential oils, and most importantly, the mind and how it influences conception. Michelle is the host of the Wholesome Fertility podcast, where she features leading professionals from the fertility world, along with her own fertility and wellness tips to listeners. Check out her website at thewholesomelotus.com. And before we jump into today's show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this to make sure you never miss an episode. Hey, Michelle, excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with your story. And I find most people that have come to this work, they have a journey as to how they got here. So maybe share yours with us.
Well, I used to be an architect. I used to work in New York City. And ever since I got my period at age 13, I've always been irregular. I never had a normal cycle. Like I would miss about 3 to 4 months at a time. And I went to a gynecologist, was put on birth control pills, wasn't really given much of a real solution. And even at the time thought this is a Band-Aid because the doctor told me when I asked, once you get off this, it's going to go back to what it is now. You have to take the pill. And it just made no sense to me because at 17, when I went, I wasn't sexually active. And I'm like, why am I going on the birth control pill? And then I realized that that was the solution to what I had if I went to the doctor. So years and years later, I went to school. I studied architecture. I was very stressed out. Um, Definitely didn't feel like that was a time in my life that I can say I was balanced in any way. And by the age of 25, that's when I was already studying architecture. I took a little break. I traveled for a couple of months, and the whole time that I was away, which was about 3.5 months, I didn't get my period not once. So I came home, and this is about years and years and years after going on the pill, getting off the pill, going on back and forth, and always feeling off when I was on the pill, just intuitively knowing that this isn't really a solution for myself. So finally, I came home and I said to my mom, this isn't normal. Like, something's got to give. I got to do something that's going to change this. But I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know who to go to. I know if I go to the doctor, they're just going to keep putting me on the pill. My age, I should be getting normal periods. So she said, well, I heard about this Chinese medicine doctor in Queens, and she took me there. And I'll tell you, the same exact day that I went to him, he gave me a bag of herbs. I came home, I got my period that day. And ever since then, I've been normal, completely normal. Like, I, had times where I was maybe a week late, but never, never did I go back to what it was before. Wow. And it just blew my mind. I was really amazed. And then not only did it make my period cycle regular, but it also created a sense in me that I felt a lot more balanced. Things that used to really stress me out were rolling off my back. It was just like things were just much easier in my life. And I felt almost like I had a little bit more control over what was going on, or some sense of a hold on myself. Like, whereas when I was younger, I just felt so out of balance that I didn't even realize how imbalanced I was. So it was pretty dramatic for me. So obviously, many years of working in architecture, I didn't feel the human connection that I would have liked. I didn't like sitting behind a desk at a computer and not connecting with people. And I was so fascinated by Chinese medicine and natural medicine to begin with. When I was younger, my grandmother used to talk to me about natural medicine. She didn't really like taking any kind of pills. And she said, if you eat the proper foods and if you take the proper herbs, everything that was meant for the human body grows on the ground. And she said, if you just do that, you'll be fine. You'll never need to go to the doctor ever. So that stuck with me. And it's always been just really fascinating to me. So years later, I just decided, you know what, I can't do this. I can't be in this path anymore. I want to go back to school. And eventually, my husband had finished his residency. He's a Western medical doctor, which is we have complete opposite learnings, I guess. Well, he's a DO, so it's a little bit more open to natural therapeutics. But we definitely balance each other. So he actually said, "Why don't you just go back to school and study?" He finished his residency. We moved to Florida. So at the time, I decided, why don't I try Ayurveda? And so I studied Ayurveda. It was fantastic. Definitely is not as regulated in the US, where, with the licensing and everything at the time that I was doing it. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't looked back at that. But it was amazing. But I still felt like I wanted more. And I still, really felt connected with acupuncture. So once my kids got old enough, I went back to school for acupuncture and studied that and was always intrigued by fertility. Was always drawn to it. And I look back and I think to myself, I didn't even add it up. Like, I realized that if I had not gone to Dr. Lee, who was the one that regulated my period, I would have had a really hard time getting pregnant with my kids. And I know that I was saved and spared. And so that was one of the reasons I felt a real calling to work with fertility. That was my story. That's what got me to doing this.
Yeah, that's quite a story with your own health, and then finding Chinese medicine, and then even with your grandmother, telling you about this natural side of things, and then coming full circle with fertility. Yeah, that's quite a
Yeah.
journey. Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm happy.
Yeah. So okay. So now we're gonna so let's kind of dig into how acupuncture can help with some of these some different infertility diagnoses, and I think we're going to be talking about this because as in functional medicine, which we don't treat the diagnosis.
Hmm.
A lot of people will get myopic or like laser focused on the diagnosis and
Yeah.
forget the other things that are going on in the body. So you have a similar philosophy. So maybe just kind of share with us, or maybe talk about your philosophy first, and then we can kind of talk about some different diagnoses and how we would approach it using traditional Chinese medicine.
So yeah, for sure. I mean, with Chinese medicine, the idea behind it really is that we create harmony in the body. Everything really comes down to the yin and the yang. And there's obviously elements involved and there's a lot more details and intricacies. It really is like like the web that has no weaver. That book really describes it. I mean, it's such a great title because it really explains how woven and intricate it is, but at the same time it really comes down to this really simple idea of balance. And what we do is we create this state of harmony in the body. And you know what balance is? If you want to use Western medical terms, it's homeostasis.
Mhm.
And so the body just wants homeostasis. It always goes and reverts to that when it is able to, when it has nothing in its way to do that. If it's able to do that, it will create homeostasis. If you get too hot, you want to cool down. You start to, drink cool foods. If you get too tired, you go to sleep. That's the normal way. It's just our body knows how to figure that out as babies, when we're young, when we're children. It just normally does that. Over time, what happens is that we stop listening to our bodies. We stop communicating with our bodies. We don't listen to it. We go to work. This is me. I mean, when I was an architect, you go to work, you get bonuses when you like do really well. You get rewarded for overworking. You start to say, "Oh, this is fun. I'm getting paid for this. I'm getting attention." This is just the way of
Achieve.
the world. Yeah. So I think that we stop listening to our bodies, or we start eating when we're already full. We continue eating. We just stop listening to our bodies. So what happens is over time that adds up. Maybe when we're younger, we have a little bit more leeway and our body's a little more forgiving, but that kind of stuff adds up. And over time, it really creates a lot of patterns in our body and a lot of disharmony, which causes symptoms. And so we look at every single individual and we look at their patterns and what their tendencies are. And those tendencies can be many different patterns, can lead to the same symptom. So, for example, we could talk about like PCOS.
Yeah, let's talk about
There's,
PCOS.
it for the majority, a lot of times it is phlegm damp, which is dampness in the body, but it could be something else, and it also could be blood stasis. So there's a lot of different patterns that can cause the same symptom. We go for the patterns, which is the root cause, rather than treating the symptom. Whereas in Western medicine, a lot of times they look at the symptom and that's what they treat. And so that's why sometimes medications can work really well for a certain number of people and then they work horribly for other people.
Absolutely, yeah. Taking that individual approach.
Exactly.
And so maybe kind of can you take us through if you have an actual, if there's a someone you can think in mind, or maybe a client you can think in mind for someone that has PCOS, maybe if it's insulin resistance or something, what would your process look like?
So I would talk to them about food. I'd figure out, because a lot of it, I believe, can be treated with food.
Yes.
Some people, I've heard many different philosophies that some people are afraid to say go low on carb or whatever. You work with a patient, you figure out what's going on. But a lot of times, really, I mean, the reality is if they lower their amount of carb intake, they do better. It's just that's one thing. And then you just really look at exactly what's going on, like what's happening in their life, what's happening with their stress level. you lower inflammation. I use supplements as well because they tend to have a lot of inflammation.
Mhm.
So there's certain supplements that are really good for PCOS specifically that have been shown to be really good. And myoinositol, there's certain specific ones that are really, really good. And then also omega-3s to lower inflammation. And then I also do the Western medical aspect of it, which is using certain herbs to help. So for example, if it is somebody with PCOS that comes in with phlegm damp, I'll use certain herbs to tonify their spleen, which can affect dampness in the body. I'll work on their digestive system if they have any gut issues. And I also work to release the dampness. And then I use acupuncture points that would help with that. And after months of doing that, things start to change. But it's key, really, really key, that the patient's on board with me and does take certain habits or changes habits to help facilitate the healing journey.
And what types of habits would those be?
It could be horrible food, like habits, eating like really, really processed fried foods. If they have gluten sensitivities, you look at that, because I do find that, and I don't know if it's because wheat is sprayed so much.
Yeah.
A lot of people do, once they get off gluten, seem to have much less of symptoms. You know what I mean? Symptoms from like whether it's gut issues or they're able to digest a little easier. I've noticed that with my patients, and I myself have gotten off of gluten. That's just something that I've observed over time.
Absolutely, yeah. We have people do an elimination diet and recommend both couples that are trying to conceive go dairy and gluten-free for a minimum of 3 months. And if they don't discover anything, if they're not pregnant at that point, then we can dig into testing. But usually most people want to move this along, so we do food sensitivity testing and testing. Do you include any testing, or is it more you do the diagnosis, kind of the Chinese, like with the pulse and the tongue? Like how are you starting?
I am actually getting more into it. I haven't done testing yet. I have a nutritionist that works in the office, and she does testing, like food sensitivity testing. Mm-hmm. But that's something that I would like to implement as well. Mm-hmm. There's just so much, but I do based on elimination and that kind of thing, because I just see how people feel after they eat. And a lot of times people who do have gluten sensitivities will feel a lot more tired when they eat anything with gluten. And they do tend to get symptoms. And usually after about a week, they feel a difference if they eliminate it.
Yeah, the number of people we work with that come back with a high gluten sensitivity is crazy. And even when they get the food sensitivity test back, when it's having gluten or gliadin in the red, which then it's kind of, because sometimes we may never be able to bring it back depending on how high it is.
Isn't it hard to test really for gluten sensitivities if they're like a lower range?
Yeah, like we use the LEAP MRT, and then we also look at a GI map test. But really the best one for gluten is the wheat zoomer, because there's like over 75 proteins in gluten. And then so if we really, really want to, dig into it, the wheat zoomer is a good one. That looks like we get 26 proteins, but even then it's just take it out. But it's like, can be really vigilant because it hides everywhere. So, so looking at the diet, which I really do believe that most people look at the diet last. It is not something that they consider when we're trying to get pregnant. Why would we, I think people probably come to you as well saying like, I eat clean. But then when we dig in, it's sort of, the definition of clean could be different. So,
right. And actually on that point, we talk about diet and everybody's like, oh, I eat really healthy. I eat lots of salads. Well, Chinese medicine, you don't want to eat too many salads because they have a raw, cold energy about them. Mm-hmm. And it also is a little harder to assimilate in the digestion, especially if somebody has, say, which is a huge one, is cold womb. Mm-hmm. We call it a cold womb. You can get it from walking barefoot. You can get like the cold running up the channels. You can get it from cold foods, from drinking too many cold drinks. And it's not really good. You want a warm environment in your uterus. People may think, oh yeah, I'm eating great. I'm having the raw food diet. It's not necessarily a great thing to have when you're trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, and the raw food diet, especially if you're up in a colder climate where eating cold food, Yeah, it's just the whole body is cold.
Exactly. And talk about homeostasis. There's no homeostasis there.
No,
Yeah.
frozen. Okay, so for PCOS, then you would and then for the acupuncture side of this, how often and what do you look at, and what's your protocol there typically
I
for
like to
PCOS?
do, like in the beginning, twice a week. That's what I would like to start with. It really depends on the person I work with. Some people have crazy schedules, but the first month I like twice a week.
Mhm.
And I find that that creates a really good foundation. And then if it's somebody, say, with endometriosis, I have a patient that comes in with endometriosis and I've been treating her. She was feeling a lot of cramps. I mean, ever since she got her period for the first time, she's always suffered from cramps. So with her, I actually increased the twice a week till for the second month. And now she doesn't have any cramps. She's like amazed. She's like,
Mhm.
I don't even know how. But with her, I also use electroacupuncture.
Okay, so what's that?
So it's when you take, have you ever been to like the chiropractor, when you put those like little pads on and they give off electricity?
Hmm.
So you take, basically, instead of the pads, it's these little, I'm like losing the word. It's something that kind of like latches on to the needle head, and the needle head is metal. So once the needle is inside the point, it brings in electricity and constantly stimulates the point
Hmm.
like a pulse. And what it does is it creates a lot of blood flow to the area and creates more like healing and brings almost like an immune response so that the body starts to heal the area. And so I use that on her as well. And it's amazing. I mean, sometimes I'm like amazed at how quick it works for some people, because if somebody's had something all their life, it usually takes a little longer. But for her, luckily, she did really well and she was very receptive. And that's another thing. I find that my patients that are a little bit more receptive, where they're a little more open and they can really feel every point while it's moving, those people tend to do better faster.
Yeah, I had some acupuncture done a couple days ago, and it was interesting when some of the points she put it in, and you sort of feel it radiate up the leg or into,
Yeah.
yeah, you could feel it in there, so you could almost feel it working its magic or whatever it's doing.
Yeah, it does. And
Yeah.
actually, it's good actually for the listeners to hear that you should feel something. Like if you go and you feel absolutely nothing, you want to get some kind of stimulation. We call it like obtaining the chi.
Mhm.
So when the needle goes in, it's not always the most pleasant feeling because it's almost like, ooh, whoa,
Mhm.
when it first goes in, but it's like a 2-second thing and then it just fades out. You do want to feel a little something because that really, it opens up the channel, it activates the point. So it's important to get that flow.
And then for herbs, I think there's people could, and I had someone else on here talking about herbs and the importance of really making sure you're getting them from a vetted or from a reliant source, because you could be getting your herbs from Amazon or is not the best idea. So how do you go about ensuring that yours are of the top quality?
Well, some of them have third-party testers, and I've just researched my butt off to find it like really, really good ones. And I pretty much stick with one or two. I don't really go crazy and try everything. I have like just really solid, good ones that are a little bit more pricey, but their quality is like up there. It's the same kind of thing as like Full Script. They have medical
Yes.
grade probiotics and medical grade supplements because they have third party testers, because the FDA doesn't regulate everything. So certain supplements that are commercial may not even have anything, what they say that they have in there. So you have to make sure that it's tested.
Yeah, because there can be fillers and all sorts of other things that you don't know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so for PCOS, you're looking at diet, looking at supplements. So the herbs, the acupuncture, twice per week, and then
Mhm.
looking at cold foods. Anything else that you would look at there for that one?
What I do too is I actually implement hypnosis, and I
Oh,
talk about mindfulness. So I just completed my hypnosis because I do feel the mind is so at the center of everything.
yeah.
So I include it in the acupuncture session. So I
Okay.
combine the two of them because there is also a link with a lot of stress, high stress, and PCOS. And you want to work on the mind because the mind is where the brain regulates everything, all the hormones in the body. So I definitely work on that.
That's nice, doing that during the same time as the acupuncture.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I just completed my certification. I was working the hours with my patients, and I've seen some pretty amazing things. It's pretty wild. I think that it is there is something that gets you a little deeper because you're feeling the points, and then I do a lot of times the point between the eyebrows, which is your visualization third eye point. I call it the third eye point. It's called yin tongue, and it creates a really calming effect on the body. So you're utilizing that point while you're getting a person into trance. So it kind of takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah, we with the therapist that I work with, she's a certified hypnotherapist, and we've had a couple people come on the podcast and talk about hypnotherapy and really looking at those subconscious fertility blocks and things that we may not even know that we're thinking, be able to use that to get unstuck.
Yeah, it's all about getting unstuck. True.
Okay, so let's talk about amenorrhea. So the lack of periods. What would you do there?
So there you go. You have two complete opposites that can cause amenorrhea. Well, a couple of different ones. I had actually found out that I had a pituitary adenoma, and that can cause amenorrhea because it makes your body think you're pregnant. It makes you the prolactin too high in the body. So that's one thing, and that can be caused from phlegm damp or blood stasis. And another thing is PCOS, which tends to be more of the insulin resistance, and you actually want to create like a different type of diet. And then you will have the other extreme of hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is not eating enough or exercising too much.
Yeah, underfueling.
So you kind of have all these different ranges, complete opposites that can cause the same thing. So it really depends on where that person is coming from.
So if a patient you can think of that you've had HA, then so hypothalamic, I can never pronounce that first word.
Hypothalamic.
There you go, amenorrhea. I actually had Dr. Rinaldi.
I had her too. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, she was on the podcast talking all about that. Her book, No Period, Now What? And so that's a cool episode to check out. But yeah, how would you handle it from a Chinese medicine perspective then for HA?
So I would definitely work a lot on the spleen, which is your digestive. It kind of takes over the digestive part of your body because they need nourishment. And it will depends. I mean, if it's a case of somebody who's like really, say they have a background with having anorexia, and they haven't eaten and they overexercise, and you kind of have to work on so many different levels. One is the mind. Another thing is trying to work with them on diet, increasing their diet. I mean, diet's really at the core of a lot as well. And then also with herbs, I would work on tonifying their spleen and also tonifying. There's one particular formula that works on the mind and the spleen at the same time. So that, that would be an example of that specific condition.
And then doing the acupuncture again, kind of twice a week in the first month then? Is that what you...
It depends on them. If they're really super deficient, I would actually do it once a week.
Okay.
Because you don't want to move too much energy if they're deficient. So it really depends on, it's so customized to every individual. But yeah, there are cases where they're so deficient, you don't want to overdo it. You want to just kind of ease them into it.
Yeah, because on that episode with Dr. Rinaldi talking about the underfueling and the overexercising, which are sort of the typical HA.
Exactly. And it gets to the point where the body is so tired that it doesn't even have energy to sustain the acupuncture stimulating the energy of the body. So you want to really tonify them and nourish them with food, probably a lot of soups, just things that are easy to assimilate. So we do a lot of diet in acupuncture. In Chinese medicine. So it is really important. It's part of the process.
Yeah, the warming foods and the soups and the warm foods. Okay. Anything else you wanted to say for amenorrhea?
And then sometimes with acupuncture, you stimulate certain points that help the channels release. So it could be like, say they have a lot of stagnation and that's causing amenorrhea, and it's not hypothalamic amenorrhea. what you would do is create more flow, which is what happened with me when I wasn't getting my period. I had a lot of stagnation in my body as well, besides just having the pituitary adenoma. And so he really moved that stagnation, and that was causing me a lot of emotional issues and also acne. So ever since I started going to him, my skin cleared up. It was like so many different things changed. So for that's another example, is just really to get the flow. We're like a circuit. Our body's like this circuit. It's almost like a machine. When you open it up and you see wires moving around, that's what we have as meridians. And when those meridians are blocked, it's not able to do what it needs to do. It's not able to communicate efficiently. So you take out the blocks through stimulating the points, and then the acupuncture itself works really well with that kind of thing, with stagnation, as well as herbs. So those two, I mean, would definitely make a huge difference. And also, again, the mind.
Yeah, the mind-body connection is real. Okay, let's go into a regular. That's what I was going to say actually about the pill. So people can be on the birth control pill, and then it could take a number of months to get their period back. And I had Dr. Jolene Brighton on the podcast, and she had her new book that came out in January, Beyond the Pill, and talking about post-birth control pill syndrome, which is this is a lot of thing where it's impacting the nutrient levels and also the health of your gut. So then predisposing you to these food sensitivities, gut infections, and then you could be eating the healthy foods and not absorbing the foods. So and then in this case, your period may have not be able to get your period back.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely throws it. I think anytime you do anything with hormones, you're walking a fine line, because the body is programmed so precisely. And hormones are such a delicate, fine balance that I don't think that we can treat them by using them.
Yes.
I think the only way to truly treat them is to figure out what's causing that in the first place, and then allowing the body to regulate the hormones, not to add hormones to the body, unless there's some kind of, major emergency or something. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, that's ours too. It's a Band-Aid approach where instead of saying, okay, maybe you could look at, HRT or bioidentical hormones later, but in the beginning, well, let's look to see the health of your gut. If you've got food sensitivities and over stress, and you're not eating, you're eating a diet that's maybe full of processed foods, and then potentially then you could, if your hormones were still low, you could look at adding things later, but not as a first step.
No. And you could be confusing the body too, because you're telling the body that it has something that it didn't make. So it's kind of like, I just think it's a very fine line, and I don't think that we realize what it exactly does, because we only know so much. We've only done so much research to figure out how the body truly works.
And so a regular menstruation, so this is what you had, how would you help someone with that? You probably see a lot of people with an irregular cycle.
Yeah, so a lot of times that has to do with something called liver chi stagnation. So that comes from stress. The liver ensures free flow. And so when it kind of starts and stops and starts and stops, it's not like harmonious. And it also regulates the hormones. A lot of times it has a very, very strong relationship with the hormones. So I would definitely, a lot of times, I don't want to say all the time because it really depends on the individual, but many times it's the liver that I would treat in that kind of situation, which is what I needed.
And how would you go about doing that then for the liver?
Through herbs and acupuncture.
Okay.
And also de-stress, because figure out coping mechanisms to cope with life and the stresses of life.
Yeah, because liver could be what isn't usually anger. Goes along with liver.
Yeah, it is. And what it does is it's supposed to ensure free flow in the body, which is like the opposite of what stress is. And when the body gets stressed, it constricts. So it almost like chokes the energy of the liver and doesn't allow it to free flow. So then it starts to stagnate. So instead of going smoothly, it goes, it kind of like it just doesn't work as free as it's supposed to. And so it causes that to stagnate. And then sometimes it even causes things to go backwards. Like the way I like to see it is like insomnia. Instead of sleeping at night, we're up at night and we're tired during the day. It's just like everything's all over the place. So I would definitely work on all of those things. And once we get a little bit more of a handle on it, Because I think that in that state, you can't really tell a person to de-stress because they can't do it from that state.
No.
You need to help them with herbs and acupuncture just to get them to a normal, at least a more manageable state. And then at that point, you can add in meditation, maybe mindfulness, or just other type of coping mechanisms, like even exercise.
Mm-hmm. And how long would you say for what have you seen to have for you, the cycle came back immediately? What do you typically see?
If it came back immediately?
Well, your cycle, I guess you said you took the herbs for a day, and I think you came back immediately.
Yeah, mine immediately. My body responded like really, really fast, but not everybody does. I would say 3 months is always it's just a great number, because even if somebody does respond really fast, they may go back to imbalance if you're not consistent with it. So, I say 3 months is always a great number.
And so you talked about endo or endometriosis. So what would you do there, and what have you seen?
So in this particular case, the person had blood stasis, which means that the blood, it's almost like, you don't want to say it is kind of a lack of circulation, but it's not necessarily the same as Western medicine. It means that, the blood isn't moving the way it's supposed to, and it kind of gets old and it's not fresh. And it creates all kinds of tissue growth where it's not supposed to be. And it happens the same with fibroids. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the electric stimulation. And you get herbs that move the blood. So if you want to compare it to Western terms, it's almost like a blood thinner, but it's not really, because it's not as strong, and it gets the blood to flow more easily. And there's certain herbal formulas that specifically work in specific locations, such as the uterus. That's what I would use, very, very strong herbs for that.
And what are anything diet-wise then you would do for endo?
I say I usually go over just in general, like not having too many cold foods.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that because anything that's cold stops things from moving. You don't want something that's going to create more stagnation, and especially if it's endo and fertility.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to not eating raw foods and not eating cold natured foods or ice cream or cold water, that kind of thing. So go back to eating warm foods, but it really depends. So if I have somebody that comes in and she tends to be cold, I would say that. And it really, I guess, it's not all endometriosis patients are the same. So that's why I just want to make a mention of that.
Absolutely. So you said we talked about fibroids, so similar to endometriosis, but is there anything there you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I actually have fibroids myself that I'm working through, and it is also energetic. I do believe in a lot of visualizations and meditation, especially when you have any kind of growth in your body. Just something to really realize of what is it, why is it happening in this particular place. At least that's how I am treating my own journey with this.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. I mean, there's herbs that are specifically targeted towards the uterus. Taking those, and also another thing for both endometriosis and fibroids is DIM is great, because a lot of times it's excess estrogen in the body that's not getting depleted or taken out by the liver properly. So I would suggest DIM is great because it gets rid of that. And it also taking flax seeds, ground flax seeds every day is great because it detoxifies the body. It has the fiber to remove it from the colon, but it also gets rid of excess bad estrogen. So, I guess I try to tackle it from many different angles.
Yeah, we use the Dutch test too to see where if the estrogen is going down the wrong pathway, and then using DIM to help that make its way out.
Yeah, I actually was looking into the Dutch test. I think that I need to start learning more about testing.
Yeah, that's the foundation of our programs. Really, when we
Great.
Just likes the target approach, but it's a similar a similar idea of looking at the root cause, not treating in this stage. We're talking about each specific diagnosis, but you have a similar philosophy. But then it's basically looking at the person not getting stuck on the diagnosis.
Exactly.
But yeah, so similarly, you may see some common themes. So with the excess estrogen for both endo and fibroids, although I was hearing someone saying that excess estrogen, someone said it's not a thing, and someone else told me it is. I don't know. I'm just hearing some conflicting. What's your take on that?
I don't know. I always heard it was a thing. I always heard it was a thing.
Yes.
You never know. You hear something and you learn about it and you kind of implement it, and then you find out the next day that it's not. And that's the thing with any kind of testing for everything. I mean, not so much. I'm not talking about just your testing. I'm talking about research and science. Is that the next study will outdo the last study, and it's just. That's the thing, and that's what I like about Chinese medicine, is that it's so old and you really rely on just looking at the body. It hasn't been outdated. There's no Chinese medicine that's outdoing an older Chinese medicine.
Yeah, that's right. And so, what about pelvic inflammatory disease?
So that a lot of times is bacterial or it's an infection. We look at that as something from the exterior coming into the body. So, and then inflammation can sometimes be excess heat. So it depends. I mean, so if you may have something coming in from, you don't know where it came from, whether it was the bladder or a sexually transmitted disease or whatever it is. And so it's all about removing the excess. And so the last thing I would do is tonify the body, because you don't want to tonify something when it needs to release it from the body. So you really get into more of a detox mentality or paradigm to release it, but then yet a little bit of a tonification just to allow the body strength to remove it.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to share what you do there? So more detoxing then. Yeah,
I mean, more detoxing, but it really, like I said, it depends on where it came from, because there's certain herbs that help release anything that came into the body. It's kind of like we consider it like an invasion from the outside. So it would be that. I mean, like I said, it's kind of hard to talk about specific symptoms and what I would do, because every single person is so individual. And I don't want to say that I would do one thing or another, and a person with that would hear this and think that that's the way to go, because it really is not. It really depends on the pulse, the tongue, what everything tells me.
Yeah, it's important to work with a practitioner. Obviously, to buy herbs off the internet, and I don't think anyone would try to use. Well, I think you can do acupressure yourself, but I don't think doing acupuncture by yourself. I don't think.
No.
Have you heard of anyone doing that?
I wouldn't recommend that.
No, that would be. I just got these ear seeds, which I haven't used yet. I'm so excited to use them. I got their 24 karat gold ones with
cool.
layers. So I got ones for stress. So I got to try that out. But those kind of things you can do yourself, but otherwise not the needle.
Yeah. But even like, somebody thinking, detox, just detox, or, you don't know. It really depends on the individual pattern.
And so the last one we'll talk about is low sperm count. How can the Chinese medicine approach help?
So low sperm count most of the time could be what we call a Jing deficiency. So Jing translates to essence, and essence is something that we usually are born with. We can save it by choices that we have or how we choose to live, but we could definitely lose it by having doing the wrong things, like partying all the time, drinking, who knows. And so that's a lot of times we can, a man can have lower, and it may not be because of anything that he did. It could be just genetics, like what he got from his parents. So we inherit Jing. And so what we would do is try to really help the kidneys. And a lot of times it could be a kidney yang deficiency, which is heat. The heat is too low in the body. So it really depends. It depends on where it comes from, and I would need to see the individual. But most of the time, it really comes down to the kidneys, which in Chinese medicine is not looked at the same way as Western medicine. The kidneys in Chinese medicine are something that we inherit from our parents, the energy from, and it really is all about reproductive energy. So they basically house the reproductive energy in our body. So with a man, I would give him like kidney boosting herbs most of the time are very, very successful with helping low sperm count.
Yeah, and then similar to the herbs and acupuncture specifically for
Yes, so for kidney yang deficiency and also ashwagandha. So I do have the background in Ayurveda, and actually there's been research that has shown that ashwagandha has helped with that. There's been maca helps with that. I mean, there's a couple of herbs that actually have been researched to show that they increase sperm count.
Yeah, also looking at diet, food sensitivities, potential gut infections, and then and a lot of the too, like the main ones which we know, but it still happens with looking at alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana obviously can impact sperm health, as well as EMFs and
phones,
exactly. To keep the cell phone away from the front pocket and take the laptop off the lap.
Exactly. Exactly. And so the good thing though is that men are much more simpler to treat as far as that goes.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, this was interesting going through each one, and as we say, this is a general approach, but each person specifically would look into to more their you said their health history and their you look at the tongue and you look at the pulse point. Anything else you're looking at on an initial intake?
Yes, we look at the skin and we listen to the voice, because sometimes it could be raspy. It could show, you can almost sense dryness in the body. Also, we look at the eyes. That's the most important thing to look at. You know, when you look at children's eyes and you can see almost like this real sense of life to them. It's just, they're so like alive, and their pupils are big, and you can really sense an aliveness and vitality. So we look at that. We call it Shen, SHEN, and it basically tells us how much vitality the person has. And some people have a little bit more of a dullness in their eyes, and you could see that they're deficient. They're really tired and drained, or sometimes it's just more of a buildup. And so the eyes are really, really important to look at as far as diagnosis. It's all about observation. Awesome. And even the nails, the nails, how dry they are, that's really important. And that's usually an indication of how the liver's doing, the skin.
What would you look for in the nails?
So sometimes they can have a lot of ridges, and they kind of tend to be more weak and brittle. That could be also blood deficiency, liver blood deficiency, because the blood's not nourishing. It's not moistening like different parts of the body. So, and then, obviously questioning. The questioning is huge. So if a person comes in, they say they have heart palpitations, and, that's a huge part of it as well, is just asking, how hot do you feel? How cold do you feel? What are you observing when you eat? Do you get bloated? Those kind of things. That's a huge aspect of also figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, looking at the whole body. Absolutely. And so is there anything you're obsessed with right now, from a book to a website to an app to a documentary? Anything you're like, ooh, I just love it?
I was just watching Heal recently, and I just I'm all about just the mind and the body, just the mind, how the mind operates and works. And I'm just really intrigued with there was this one story that a person with multiple personality disorder, allergic to like orange juice, and then turned into a different personality and stopped becoming allergic. And I'm like, wow, like that fascinates me. I just think that it just goes to show that we are so much more powerful than we think. And just the idea of that gives me so much hope, and it gives me hope to give to my patients. And I just think it's so cool that it's kind of cool that we don't realize just how powerful we are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the documentary. I saw it on iTunes a while ago, but it's now on Netflix. I think it came on there back in February or March. It came on Netflix. So definitely check that one out. And is there a success story you'd like to share with us?
I'll talk about my most recent one, which is somebody who came in to do IVF. She wanted to prepare for IVF, and she came in with very immature eggs. She was in her early 30s. And the one doctor told her that she was close to menopause because she was early in her period, which I was just really surprised that he even used that word with her,
Yeah.
especially for the fact that I really believe so much of the mind over matter, and the fact that we place so much trust in doctors. So when we hear things like that, it almost feels like a hex, it just kind of
Get stuck there. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets people stuck there. So she came in very devastated, and she, after a couple of months of treatment and being pretty consistent, she was great because she was on top of it. She did a meditation CD that I gave her. She was really, really on top of everything. And she ended up retrieving 10 eggs and getting, after a couple of different things, it doesn't go, you don't get all the 10 embryos in the end, but she ended up getting 2 good embryos. So I was really happy, it was really exciting to see. And then another person who just gave birth and brought the baby. And I was just very, those are just like little miracles that you get to see. And I just find so amazing. It's just such a beautiful miracle of life.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a free download for the listeners. So the top 10 fertility boosting habits, and they can get that at the wholesomelotus.com. So thewholesomelotus.com. And so what can they expect in that?
So I basically put everything together, just all the major ones that I tell everybody that I constantly sound like a broken record about because they're so important. And I find that it's just something that everybody can do. It's so easy to implement, like today. Awesome. So I really wanted to put that in there, something that everybody can do. It's just a little bit more on getting people empowered to take, charge of their own health and their own fertility health.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, sharing your words of wisdom around this topic. It was really great to dig into it with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great.
I don't know whether you've heard, but I'm offering some spaces in my calendar for Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Calls. So this call is for you if you're ready to get pregnant naturally or improve your chances at the fertility clinic. We take a functional approach to fertility. It's the future of conventional medicine. So there's a reason that so many medical professionals who are trying to conceive work with us. The approach is rooted in science. So the call is for both you and your partner. Go to FabFertile, FabFertile.com and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be booked in and ready to spend 30 of the most valuable minutes ever on your fertility. So that's FabFertile, FabFertile.com, and click on the link to book a free call.